Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3, episode 3 from the A to the Bay podcast. And as you can tell, I'm pretty excited right now. First time I've seen something
Let's go, baby.
since 2001. I was 7 years old, KD. What's going on? I know you're a Braves fan too. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Hey, Freddie Freeman and the pitching staff one day, Ronald Acuna and the pitching staff the next day. I never thought I'd see the day. I mean, do you even remember that 2001 NLDS when they swept the Astros? I mean, you were 7 years old. Can you think back that far?
Well, let's see. So, you know how you remember some things and then you don't remember others?
Yeah.
Funny enough, I can remember being in Minnesota for the 1998 NFC Championship, but
Oh,
I cannot
one of the best days of
remember
my
the.
life.
Oh my goodness, it was amazing. But I cannot remember the last time the Braves won a series. So, and obviously, everyone, if you're a baseball fan, you know there's been a lot of heartbreak from 2001 up to now. So yeah, this is woo much needed, much needed.
Yeah. I'll say my freshman year was fall of 2005 at Stanford, and I remember being in my room watching that 18-inning game against the Houston Astros that we lost in four. Like, snap of a finger, bottom of the 18th, first pitch, series over. But like, yeah, that was one of my first memories at Stanford, just staying in my dorm, my 160 square foot dorm all day, just to watch the Braves break my heart. Like I said, I wasn't sure they were going to win a series again, but it's that warms my heart. And you know what else warms my heart as a Braves fan?
What's
The
that?
Minnesota Twins losing 18 straight postseason games. That's an incredible, incredible losing streak.
It is. It is. The crazy thing about it is, so they've lost 18 straight. So, but I think that means that we still would have lost more postseason series in a row than they have. So, I
Yeah.
saw that stat too, and I was like, I really don't feel bad for them. I
Oh
don't.
yeah.
I don't feel bad one bit. Um,
Not at all.
yeah, but I tell you what though, and right now while we're recording, obviously the Padres and Cardinals game 2 is on right now. Kevin, this has been a pretty fun postseason. I mean, you have the two extra teams in both leagues. This has been fun.
Yeah, I thought like I'm usually not a fan of playoff expansion because I just think it kind of waters down the regular season. But in a situation like this, when you only have 60 regular season games, you're playing 37% of your normal regular season. You need to account for the parity that's going to happen in 60 games and widen the postseason base. So I loved having 16 teams. And another thing that's great about it is you had 8 playoff baseball games yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened before. That's awesome. I was, on ESPN, they were saying it started at noon Eastern and ended at 1:30 Eastern. So you had 13 and a half hours straight of intense baseball, ending with that crazy Yankees-Indians game last night, with the rain delays and this and that, and eventually a 10-9 Yankees win. So I think it's been a lot of fun. I'm also an A's guy. I'd be an A's fan more if they were the San Jose A's. That's a story
Uh-oh.
for another day. Don't worry, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I also picked up the White Sox like when I was living in Chicago, just because I loved Ken Harrelson and how his propensity for cussing on air was pretty funny. But so yeah, it was great to see the A's win a postseason series. Something I thought, oh, those things don't come around too often. So the
Right.
A's and Braves clinching on the same day was, yeah, the match made in baseball heaven for Kevin Dana.
Yes. But
Hell yes.
no, whenever I hear or see highlights and Mr. Harrelson's in it, it's some of the best. I mean, I think obviously Kevin, we're both broadcasters, and one of the best things about it is that when someone talks about you and they know that one call that you have or that one this is just you, and obviously Ken Harrelson, there's so many of them. Obviously, there's his home run call. I mean, so many of them. He was definitely on that list for me. Of there's a White Sox highlight. I need to go check that out.
Yeah, exactly. And like he helped me kind of get acclimated to Chicago. I'll never forget. It was 7-6. They were losing to the Twins, top of the ninth. Alexi Ramirez, this is the 2010 season, was at the plate. And I'm like kind of half listening to the game. I'm doing my grad school work. And Alexi hits one deep to left. And he's like, it's it's going back. It goes over the board or over the fence, and he's like, "You can put it on the board." Yes, hell yes. I was like, "Wait, what?" And it's like, as broadcasters, you like to feel like you're technically sound and all that. Well, he breaks like every rule of broadcasting, and I love it. And I think that's like the special thing about it. He does everything I would not do on a broadcast, and he's one of my favorite broadcasters.
Oh, I think that's safe to say, and I think even outside of just the game calling, you think about in the show that we talk about a lot inside the NBA. The reason why they're so popular is the same thing. They will do a lot of things that if you want to go by the book, they pretty much do anything and everything the book doesn't say to do.
Exactly.
But it's authentic, and I think that that's what makes it resonate so much to the people that watch the show. Obviously, we watch it, whether it's Shaq and the Fool or the back and forth that Shaq and Charles have. It's 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, back to 1. Any of those things that go on, and so it's weird. But at the same time, it's funny since you mentioned the baseball announcer going against that book, so to say. It's the same thing that we're seeing in baseball right now, but it's one of those things that people are adjusting to it and they're adapting to it. And I mean Fernando Tatis, who is an absolute monster, he's already hit 2 home runs in this game, and there's the big bat flips and stare downs and all that. And maybe say 10 years ago. Well, I mean, even if you're mad,
even less.
2.
Yeah.
there's probably going to be a fight breaking out, or the next guy up is going to be wearing one on his back.
Yeah, I agree, Wally. And the thing, like, that's one of the most annoying things to me because, baseball was my first sport that I loved. Like, my first sports memory, Braves on TBS 91 season when I was 4 years old. So, like, my roots for the sport go a long ways. But, like, things that would turn me off would be people saying, something like, like a bat flip, and people saying, "Well, that's not baseball," or now you have to protect your team, your pitcher, and if he pimps a home run, you have to protect your ego and you have to throw at the guy the next time. It's just like all these unwritten rules just kind of really bring the game down, and I'm glad that we're kind of moving away from that a little bit. Speaking of bat flips, my favorite one of all time is still Jose Bautista, Joey Bats. 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, Rangers, Blue Jays. I think it was Game 5 of the ALDS. Hits one and just chucks his bat. And it's just like the most violent bat flip I've ever seen. And I was so pumped.
It was cool. And obviously this is the one thing that we're missing right now with no fans, is that the reason why that moment was even bigger is you're looking at the game at Rogers Center where the Blue Jays play up in Toronto. The place is shaking. And that's like the moment and the crowd, it just added to the bat flip because he sits there for a second, pauses, then chucks the bat, and then goes right. It was just like, even as someone that had nothing invested in either of the teams, I felt goosebumps. I was just like, this is playoff baseball. This is awesome.
I've been there. I love that stadium. I had a chance to go to Detroit and Toronto in 2014. I do a couple of ballparks every summer with my dad, and we made that trip. Toronto, great city. That ballpark is great. Speaking of being in the crowd and stuff, I don't know how much you remember since you brought up the Falcons-Vikings game, and not a lot of positive news to talk about the Falcons these days, but this was a good memory. I'll make sure I don't say 26-10 anytime soon or 28-3. But going back to that NFC Championship game, like, what was it like being, wearing a black or white Falcons jersey with, 80,000 fans or whatever, like, you, your mom and your dad in Falcons gear and everyone else just, in their purple?
So actually, from what I remember, and again, there's just a little bit of splashes here or there, but from what I remember, there was actually a good turnout for Falcons fans, at least in the city. Maybe not necessarily in the stadium, but in the city, there was a good turnout. And I just remember, because my mom, she keeps re-emphasizing this for me, there was a point in that game, I think it was when was it Ken Anderson? I know their kicker, because remember there was Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson.
Anderson for
perfect
us,
on the
Gary
season.
Anderson for them. And I just remember, and she told me how I thought the game was over. I thought we were going to lose. And we're pretty like we're in the upper decks in the old Metrodome, and if if anyone's never been able to go there or heard stories about it, that place was loud. And I just remember, so she tells me, I start crying. I'm just sad. And again, this is like 2, 3-year-old me, everyone. So like, cut me some slack. But I don't think I ever cried about a Falcons game that I can remember again until the Super Bowl. But I just remember then all of a sudden, obviously Gary Anderson misses. Morton Anderson, Falcons drive down. We get the kick to win it, and I'm going crazy. I'm happy. And it's funny, to this day, I joke with my mom. I say, you're the reason the Falcons lost the Super Bowl that year, right? Because so my mom and dad went, and
they
they
did.
went to Miami.
Nice.
I wish they could have been some bodyguards or supervisors for Eugene Robinson.
Eugene Robinson.
That's a different story for a different day. But so, and I went to grandma's house, and look, Padres homered again. But
wow.
I was at grandma's house, and they went, and obviously we lost. And I'm just like, well, you took me to Minneapolis, and they won. You don't take me to Miami, and you see what happens.
Yeah.
So I just love giving her slack for it.
Oh, speaking of Waddy and football, I just happened to I Google search you because I Austin somehow, and I figured maybe it was because of Woodward Academy. So I just put in Jordan Watkins Woodward Academy, and I saw one of the most dominant high school tapes I've ever seen. Like, dude, you're getting into the backfield on the snap. I don't know if you remember your high school football tape, but I was like, are you playing against JV players as a senior? Because like it was not fair. I mean, it's like you see all like on National Signing Day, you see all these crazy like recruiting videos of like these guys that are running like 3-4-40s, it seems like, and just stiff arming 12 people, yada yada. I mean, it was kind of like that. How quickly you're just like dominating in the backfield. It was like, wow. So yeah, people, I check out Google search Jordan Watkins Woodward Academy if you want to see some good defensive line tape.
No, I appreciate it. And it's funny. There's one play I can think of that I think is on that tape, and it was funny. My hand was broken at this time, so I pretty much only had one hand. And we're playing this one team. This was my junior year. We're playing this team, Columbia, really good team, going to be one of the best teams on our side of the region that year. And they had this running back who, oh my goodness, Kendall Loyal. I'll never forget him because he was an absolute tank. It took 3-4 at a time, most plays to get him down. He was a monster. And there was a 4th and 1 in that game. I think it was third or fourth quarter. And I just remember telling myself in my head, I said, you know what? I might get an offsides. If I think they're snapping this, I'm going. And so I risked it all and did like a quick swim move over the guard. And I just, my one hand held on for dear life. It's like, somebody else come get this guy down. I have one. I can't do it right now. But no, high school football was a lot of fun times. But yeah, so as Kevin just hinted on, one of my good friends, Austin Schulte, he works with game day ops at Georgia Tech this year. And of course, setting up for football games this year might be a little bit different. So in a second, we're actually gonna take a break here, and then in a second, we're gonna have Austin come on, and we're just gonna talk to him about how his daily and weekly schedule looks like in terms of making sure that Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta is hitting all the protocols for COVID and social distancing and all that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, everyone. Welcome back to From the A to the Bay podcast. Jordan Watkins alongside Kevin Dana. And I am so happy to announce our new guest for this week, the Events and Facilities Assistant at Georgia Tech in my hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. My friend, Austin Schulte. Austin, what's going on, man? I know it's a little late over there, so how are you doing?
Just a little late. Thanks for having me, Waddy. I had to bring some A to the podcast. You've got a lot of Bay over there, so I had to bring some A.
Don't worry about me. I got it covered today.
It's a big day in Atlanta.
Huge day. So, we'll just go ahead and get things started. Again, so like I mentioned, Events and Facilities Assistant. obviously, I know you've been working in sports quite a while now. You were back at UNC when you were working on your master's as well. And obviously, I know everyone can understand that there are going to be differences this year, especially setting up for football games versus in the past. What would you say, like, just I guess kind of walk through your week? What are some of the differences from usual seasons to this year that you have?
Right. So I think kind of when we were preparing for this season, we really wanted to kind of look at the fan experience from like the second they got on campus all the way to kind of, through the game when they enter the gate, all the way to when the kickoff starts and then when they're leaving. And how can we kind of make that as safe and as an experience as possible? So like kind of some of the adjustments we made for one is we've made our parking lots not open until 3 hours prior to kickoff. So that kind of helps with like the tailgating stuff. We canceled tailgating formally. You kind of have to be restricted to your spot when you're in your parking lot if you have a parking pass or whatever. And then once you're leaving your car, heading to the game, we've kind of got all kinds of signage. It'd be almost impossible to miss. You'd almost have to run into it. And then, when we're coming in through the gate, we try and place markers down for where people need to be as they come up to go through our metal detectors. And then when they get their ticket scanned, and then once they're inside the stadium, we try to make it as contactless as possible. So this year, we're not accepting any cash at any of our concession stands. I've got some pictures of some different signage we have, for where to sit, where not to sit. What to do if you're going in the elevator, how many people can be in the elevator? Our water fountains have been kind of something I didn't think about would be a big issue, but, we're trying to make sure people are only using the water fountains just to refill their bottles versus, taking sips out of it. So it's a lot of little things you don't really consider or you kind of think about, when you're going to a game typically as a fan. But then you're like, wow, there's a lot of, potential touching there between different fans and whatnot. So it's been eye-opening for sure. And it's been a lot of work, and I think from week one, we hosted UCF a couple weeks ago, and then now we're making adjustments to our next game when we play Louisville next Friday. So it's been kind of cool to be on that process for sure.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating to hear, Austin. And the one thing I was curious about is here on the West Coast, yeah, sure, we love our college football, but we don't love it like they do in the South. The SEC, it just means more. I mean, you went to Georgia, you've been around the South, and you know what it's like to love college football in the Southeastern United States. So you say the parking lot isn't open until 3 hours before kickoff. And, for a lot of West Coast fans, that's more than enough time. But I know like in the South with tailgating, some people get there Wednesday for a Saturday game. So,
Right.
like, how early would it, like, how much of a reduction in hours is that? Like, when would a parking lot normally open on a game day pre-COVID?
So typically, I can kind of speak for Georgia Tech and UNC. Being at Georgia Tech, I've only been here for this first year, so it's like that's all I've known is that kind of 3 hours prior. But you think about like UNC games, a lot of it depends on the game time. But even then, like the difference between a 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. kickoff and an 8 p.m. kickoff, they're still going to open those lots at 9 a.m. or whatever, regardless, or 6 a.m. regardless. So the overall time kind of shrinks by a little bit. But like for pretty much regardless of the kickoff time, they're going to be open early. So it's just been a big adjustment for, our staff as well as kind of our parking partner. They've got to kind of change the way they do things as well as we do. So kind of make sure that all third parties, kind of are on the same page has been kind of important for us.
So if you can walk me through at least a little bit of how some of the decision-making process looked in terms of, like you said, the limit for people on elevators, the certain signs, how the security lines are going to look like. Is that something that is like an ACC thing where a lot of people talked about it? Is it just Georgia Tech on their own? How did that look?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it, as far as like general capacity, I think that's a lot of, state and governor decisions, whether or not they're allowing people at all. And a lot of the signage and stuff that we are comfortable with kind of comes from our president, collaborating with our athletic director, and then like our higher ups on the events and facility side. That's not to say that we don't get any input at all. They're constantly asking for different ideas, things we've kind of seen at other schools, and I think Georgia Tech in particular is pretty fortunate. We were away the first week, so we kind of spent that first weekend watching, kind of seeing what other schools were doing. Not to call out FSU, but I think they got a lot of flack that first week when they played, and they got a lot of flack in particular for their student section. Pretty much having no one with masks on. So the way I saw it was, we played UCF and didn't go viral on Twitter. So that's got to be a positive.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, another thing that I was thinking about was, a lot of these rules that we have in place because of COVID, like it goes against the grain of who we are as like just social beings. So I was curious, like how well were the fans like responding to the new regulations, from the sense of I'm sure a lot of people didn't mean to be like breaking the rules. It's just like what they normally do, but like it's so intrinsically like fired into their brain that this is how they experience football. What was kind of like, maybe not necessarily the fan reaction, but how well were people able to kind of follow protocols your first week?
Yeah, so we, from my personal perspective, when I was walking around, I felt like our fans in particular, like I think they want to be at games, and I think they're willing to follow these protocols. And if that's what it takes for them to go to football games, they'll do that willingly. I think a lot of schools, not just us, are probably having more issues with kind of like their away fans. I think that might be an issue for some schools, and it's kind of a difficult thing to kind of police too, because you want to be hospitable, but these people are coming to your school, and it's kind of a weird line. And then another kind of issue I kind of feel like we're having some trouble with is, when our policy is your mask has to be on. Anytime you're walking on the concourse, even when you're in your seat, your mask has to be on unless you're eating or drinking. So a lot of times it's like, if I'm walking down an aisle and I see someone without a mask on, well, it's like, did they just take a sip of water? Did they just, have a bite of pretzel or something? So like the line is so thin, and it's so hard to strive for that kind of 100% compliance. It's difficult, and that's kind of, how can we do better in enforcing that? So that was kind of some adjustments we're looking from, our first game to now. We didn't put like any of our security team kind of through the aisles in our first game. And this next week against Louisville, we're going to have some security people walk up and down the aisles. They're going to have a sign that says, please wear your mask or whatever. And we're going to kind of actively enforce our mask policy. We're a little bit more lax on that first week because we're kind of just trying to get a feel for it. But now, like, our goal is to actively enforce that and make sure everybody is staying safe while they're at our stadium.
Awesome. Well, let's see, Kevin. So I have two questions for Austin. First one, so going back to outside stadium, you're talking about the metal detectors, security lines. Obviously, whenever you get thousands and thousands of people coming into one place at one time, lines can get pretty long. And so what were the protocols that you all had in place for that, knowing that could be that situation?
Right. So I think, luckily, for me, it was like we're limited our attendance to 20%. So we're right about 11,000 people. So we actually didn't really, from my perspective, we didn't have, that late rush. One thing we kind of did to combat that was we offered some concessions, discounts. Now, whether or not, I don't know if that got people in early or not, but that was definitely one way we try to encourage people to come in, before 10 minutes before kickoff or whatever. So we offered some discounts. If you came in 90 minutes to 60 minutes before the game started, you get that discount. But we did place markers, from the metal detectors 6 feet out. If we completely went no bag, so we're not even doing clear bag policy. So you have to have it in a Ziploc bag. That way our security team doesn't have to, physically touch your bag. So that removes another contact point. And then, so even doing with the metal detectors, that becomes a non-contact thing as well, where they just walk through. And then if needed, for additional clearance, we've got like the wands to kind of wand them down afterwards. So we're just trying to remove all those contact points that might have been there last year when we didn't have the metal detectors. So I think that's been beneficial as well.
Nice. And then so second, and the main reason I think I'm asking this one is because I know Kevin and we were looking at, I think it was Clemson about a week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they were social distancing with people from side to side. But in
Right.
terms of vertically, I mean, and maybe this was just the angle, but it looked like it was just every single row was just like everyone was there, is just 6 feet apart sideways.
Yeah. And
So
yeah, and they kind of went viral on Twitter for that
yeah,
too. So I'm
exactly.
glad we didn't end up doing that.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly what, different thought process. It's been interesting to see what other schools are doing. You look at Georgia and they're actually putting seat backs for every single person outside the student section. So that is more specific in telling where people can and cannot sit. Whereas if you're a season ticket holder, you can add that seat back to your seat, and that will be your actual like seat. But yeah, it's been interesting because we're allowing people to sit in groups from 2 to 8. If you bought season tickets, the students, we made the decision to, we're doing a lottery. And if you win the lottery to get a ticket, you get a +1. And then they've all got we call them stinger seats, but where they can come with a friend as well. So instead of making it like groups of 1 and then that group becomes bigger or whatever, we're allowing them to win win 2 tickets and take someone else. So it's been interesting to be a part of, and like kind of put in those seat wraps as what we put on each bleacher, telling them people where they can and cannot sit. And that was a long 3-day process. So I'll see if I can screen share some of these pictures. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, nice.
Is that full screen now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is kind of funny, this picture. I'm sure you guys have seen both these pictures. Yep. So this is the picture from 1918 with the Spanish flu, and these bleachers are still there, which is kind of crazy. So they're right underneath the west stands. But so this is what we started with. So we went through every single section in our stadium, and with kind of collaborated with the ticket office, and we put these seat wraps on wherever season ticket holders were or individual game buyer tickets were. So, it was just pointing where you can and cannot sit. And so, like I said, that first week, this is all we did. We didn't put anything on like the empty rows or anything. And then we kind of, had our first game and realized that people were kind of sitting on those rows. And that was kind of bothering some people. We got some feedback on that. So we ended up adding these row closed signs and added these to the end of each row that didn't have any seats in it. So that's also going to help with enforcement as well. So if our security team comes by, it's fairly obvious versus you might not be able to see whether or not the seat wrap is there. So this should hopefully deter more people from sitting in those empty rows that are kind of reserved for distancing. And this is just kind of what it looks like. So you can, like I said, you can buy those stinger seats and that will be your seats, but we didn't do what Georgia did and put them out for everybody. We just continued to offer it as a purchase as they did in prior years.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was going to say, how long did it take to put all those seat wraps around?
So that was about a 3-day process.
Okay.
We got a lot of volunteers from our athletic department. Probably about 20 or so band members came out and helped. A really cool story. Coach Passner from the men's basketball team came out and did it as well, which was really cool. That he was willing to be a part of that. And that was we definitely didn't get any cool days when we were doing that. And there's not too much shade in that stadium, so we were getting roasted. But people do a lot for free lunch, so luckily we all. So that was a 3-day process, and then we knocked out the cones. That was 2 days ago, and that was it only took us about 5.5 hours to do that. So we did that all in one day, which wasn't too bad.
How many people did you have putting the cones down?
We had about 5 or 6 of our athletic staff. And then we had probably about 4 or 5 student workers that came out and helped. Okay. Which this one was significantly easier. It's just taped on the bottom. So where there's the seat wrap, we had a zip tie on the bottom, and that just kind of added a lot more time. Yeah, it wasn't too fun at all. Let's see what else I've got.
Must have been a good lunch.
Yeah. So this is a picture of the student section, so you can see all those seats kind of put together. So if you won you weren't assigned one of these particular seats. It's all general admission, but you have those two seats together. So obviously those are distance and spaced out as well. And then I've got just some other random pictures I can roll through as well. So this is kind of when I was talking about the water fountains, and we kind of pushing them to be called hydration stations, where we're trying to use people just to refill their water bottles instead of drinking directly from, so they're not, using the spigot or whatever. This is kind of our policy. So one of the things I was in charge of was we got 20. So this is just the top third of a tri-stand that's probably about 8 feet tall. So this is the COVID safety protocol sign on that tri-stand. So we've got 20 of these stands that we put out throughout the stadium, and this is kind of just letting everybody know about our safety protocols and what exactly our mask policy is. So we really wanted to hammer signage as much as we could and spread that out. It's pretty much where it was almost annoying that you couldn't miss it. This is kind of your basic elevator occupancy sign. We put that with our hospitality people, so they have like a stand so people can see what exactly occupancy is for the elevator, and that way it kind of clears up. It's not like people aren't trying to pile into an elevator. It kind of removes like a little awkward moment as well. So this is another thing I was in charge of building. So we have 40 of these spread out throughout the stadium. So it's just a little cardboard sanitation station, and it's got hand sanitizer on them. So we kind of spread those strategically throughout all the concourses and some of the club areas as well. So it's just, if you want hand sanitizer, if you're walking out of the concourse, or if you just bought concessions or something, you can get that. Just kind of another way to be more proactive than reactive. And I think that might be all I've got as far as pictures go.
Oh, that's impressive. And I mean, I expect nothing less from Georgia Tech. It was funny. There was this shirt that you had the other day. It was something about trusting science or something science related that they were handing out,
Yep.
right?
So yeah, it's actually been really cool. So our university, or I guess institute, has been great with partnering with athletics and campus, where we actually throughout, I guess it probably started in early August, once the students got back, we opened up a COVID testing site in Bobby Dodd Stadium. So inside gate 4, students were able to kind of come in, get tested, and then it was just kind of an easy way to come in and then go back out. So that's been really neat to be a part of as well. And it's just free testing for students, and they takes probably like 2 or 3 minutes. And I think they've really appreciated partnering with us, and we've appreciated partnering with them to kind of get that going. And I think, we've done tons and tons of tests, and they found some, they kind of do it through surveillance testing. So they test like a bunch of numbers at once. And then if someone in your pod or whatever comes back positive, and then they'll kind of reassess and see if you need to do more testing. So I think they've tested over like 50,000 people. So it's been really a big success. Yeah. So it's a little bit more on us to kind of flip the gate, prior to game day. But I think, between us and them, I think it's been beneficial for everyone.
Wow. One question I had and this is kind of going back in the conversation a little bit. I thought that was pretty ingenious with the discounts for concessions to like try to get people in early. How much of a bottle up did you see around kickoff time for that first week against Central Florida?
So I was on the West Concourse. So I had gates 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And honestly, through my gates, it was a pretty steady flow. I didn't really notice much of a bottleneck per se. So we try to space it out as much as we can. So like we'll push our gates out a little bit to where our metal detectors are like pretty. I don't want to say like close to the street, but they're pretty far out. And then there's a decent bit between, after you get checked and go through security, and then you get to your ticket where you scan it, there's a decent bit. So it kind of prevents that bottleneck at any point. So you're constantly moving through. But like on my side, I felt, we did a pretty good job. And whether that's, the fans did a good job about, showing up at, consistently, But I didn't think we had too much of a bottleneck, at any of the gates I was at. They were all, moving pretty good, which has been nice.
And just overall, how has it been on campus in general with COVID? In terms of, I know you say they're doing all the testing in the stadium. Is there any news about positive test rates or anything like that on the campus overall?
Yeah, one thing I've been pretty pleased with, and it's been pretty refreshing, is they constantly are updating their dashboard with their numbers, and I don't think they've really had any big outbreaks or any big spikes. I kept up with UNC and with Georgia, just kind of being an alum from both, and I know UNC tried in person and then they had to go straight online after like 2 weeks. So we haven't had any of that. Like whenever I'm on campus, I always see people wearing their mask, and I don't know if that's a culture thing between Georgia Tech and UNC or even UGA or anything like that. But I've been pretty pleased. They've been pretty transparent with everything, and kind of encouraging people to get tested as much as possible. So like with the testing that we were hosting and Bobby Dodd, they were saying, come get tested weekly. It's only takes 5 minutes, and we'll let you know your results in 2 to 3 days, and then you can't really beat the convenience. So I went and got tested 5 times because I was right there. So, and thankfully negative every time. So
5 for 5. I'm batting 3 for 3. So
yeah,
no, it's a good feeling to get that negative test. But now this is really impressive stuff, Austin, because as I told you in the text, and those who have seen the first 2 episodes of this podcast, that they know where I stand on fans in the stands. I am not for it, but I do appreciate what Georgia Tech is doing, because when I see some of these other schools like Notre Dame, for instance, or you mentioned Florida State or Clemson, where apparently in South Carolina coronavirus only spreads horizontally and not vertically, you wonder just how much is going into safety protocols. But it's really interesting to hear all the detailed steps that you guys are taking at Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Yeah, and it's been some really long days, but I think like people have appreciated it for us, and I think we've got generally pretty good feedback on a lot of the stuff we've been doing. And like I said, I think people want to come to games, and I think they want to be back in live sports, but they just want to be able to do it safely. So, as much as we can do to help promote that kind of safe environment, we'll do. And I think from week to week, luckily, we were off the first week, could watch some other schools, had that home game, kind of have 2 weeks to reevaluate. And then, we played Friday, and then we go and play Clemson the next Saturday. So we'll kind of see how those next 2 weeks go, and then probably, reevaluate again. So I think that's the thing. We're always kind of adjusting to what other schools are doing. What do we see? What feedback do we get from, our fans and whatnot? So.
Well, let's hope down the road that this Georgia Tech team, I know they're in transition, but they can reward you and the rest of your team's hard work with a couple of home wins. I know they got the one in Florida State, but let's get some home wins for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a heck of a home schedule left too. So, we host Louisville next Friday, and then we've got Clemson and Notre Dame coming in, and Duke and Pittsburgh. So we're going to have some opportunities for some exciting games. So, hopefully we don't have to deal with a Miracle on Techwood or anything. So I don't know how we can socially distance if we end up rushing the field. But fingers crossed we can figure that out if that happens.
Yeah, hopefully that game against Notre Dame happens, considering all the problems they've had.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. We got to get to that's on Halloween too, nonetheless. Ooh. So we got to get that far.
Yeah.
I know some campuses will not look pretty on Halloween.
No.
Man, Austin, this has been awesome. I appreciate you finding the time again. I know it's late over there. Appreciate you finding the time to just chat with us. I mean, like Kevin said, this is awesome. I think we're all in agreement here. If we're going to make this happen, whether it's sports in general or having fans in the games, you got to make sure all the steps are being taken to make sure it's as safe as possible. And it sounds like you guys are on it, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and it's been a pleasure. Like I said, got to bring the A.
Yeah. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, you guys have a good one. Thanks.
All right, you too, man. Okay, and we are back and from the A to the Bay podcast. Jordan Watkins alongside Kevin Dana. Again, we just wrapped up that interview with my friend Austin Schulte working at Georgia Tech. And Kevin, again, like we talked about there in the break, very impressive, thorough, awesome stuff going on there at Georgia Tech.
I really was interested in hearing Austin talk about everything that they have done. I mean, the lengths they have they have gone to, I should say, to make Bobby Dodd a safe place to watch a football game. I mean, it did not convince me that we should have fans in the stands, but I appreciate the effort that they're taking and all the painstaking things that they are doing to make sure it is as safe as possible.
Well, and I think like we said, the same thing that we've been saying for the actual athletes, it's the same thing with the fans. And where the question is, like you said, is this the safest thing to do? I don't know, because I think even when you look at some of the football teams that have had their issues, it's not like their spreads are going when they're in the facilities. Their issues go, what do you do when you're away from the facilities?
Exactly.
And so in that regards, if the football programs are doing everything, and obviously basketball is going to be starting up soon, and other sports, if you're doing everything that you can to make sure the athletes are safe, then it's like, okay, let's try to make this work. And I think that's got to be the same with the fans. And I think the thing that was most interesting to me was that how he talked about how they every single chance they get to reevaluate and relook things, whether it's from what they see other schools doing, maybe feedback they've gotten, that they're always looking to change something up and make it better. So I thought that was really good too. There's no just, all right, well, this worked 1 week, let's just stick with it. That was pretty cool too.
You know, Waddy, it's funny how watching film takes different shapes. So, like when
Absolutely.
you were a football player at Stanford, even high school, you have your film sessions with your coaching staff and your position coach. And now Austin's in a position where he's watching film of how other stadiums are seating their fans and stuff. And you know, just kind of like as a broadcast, I'm watching games to see the shape of players, because like if I'm calling the game off a monitor, I'm not going to be able to see their face. So does this person wear highlighter shoes? Do they wear an elbow band? Do they wear a headband? That's how I watch games, to just try to and figure out the shape of a person and just like how big and wide someone is. So it's just interesting the different ways that people use film to kind of get things, you know, situated for their own preparation. Whereas traditionally, when we think about watching film, we think about coaches with their players like, you got to have this technique here and that technique here, but it goes way beyond that.
And I think one thing that'll be interesting to see too from another sports standpoint, and we'll get to this sport in a little bit too, a little bit later. With baseball, obviously I know the wild card round still going on for a lot of teams, but once they get to that division series, whether it's in Texas or in California, I believe there's a plan in place, either the divisional series or the championship series, where fans can be there. I know at least for the next series, the divisional series, Truist Park's going to be open as a watch party area. So I will be interested to see, maybe do people at Truist Park reach out to people at Georgia Tech and say, hey, what have you guys been doing? Maybe we need to implement some of that into what we're doing.
They should.
Absolutely. And because it's been interesting, obviously. So if you haven't been before, there's this area called the Battery right outside Truist Park where the Braves play. And they've been having watch parties there. And sometimes during the Braves games, they'll do a little bit of coverage and show the fans out there. And as you could guess, not really too much social distancing, especially when you see, Freddie Freeman's walk-off hit or the home runs today. And I didn't see many masks. And so obviously Twitter has been talking about that. I know a lot of my friends in Atlanta have been talking about that. So I'd say when it comes to having a good look for the Braves, when it comes to fans, not off to the best start. So, here's to hoping that can change when they open up Truist Park on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, just during the postseason, I've seen that when they cut out to the fans there. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And not to make this a political show, but when your governor's Brian Kemp and he doesn't know that spread was asymptomatic until a month into the pandemic, and then he shoots down Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom's mask mandate because people need to decide for their own. Like, you can see why the people of Atlanta and Georgia in overall as a state would be so confused when their governor is a total idiot.
The CDC is 20 minutes away from the governor's mansion. Anyways, going on. One of the topics that we've been talking about a lot the last few weeks, basketball. It's a pretty awesome time right now. Obviously, Game 1 of the NBA Finals happened last night. The Lakers, big win for them. Hopefully, the injuries with the Heat. I think Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo might be doubtful for Game 2, so yikes to that. But the cool thing for tomorrow is not only is there Game 2, right before it, you have Game 1 of the WNBA Finals. So you got finals to finals back to back. That's really cool.
That is awesome. Back-to-back coverage. I don't know where to start, but Friday is going to be a great day for some shooty hoop. It's going to be a lot of fun. Aces, Storm, and then, of course, Heat, Lakers. I'll just say one quick thing since you mentioned Dragic and Adebayo. Watch out for my guy Kendrick Nunn, former Santa Cruz Warrior. He had a hell of a second half. He's been out of the rotation. He had COVID, so and then he got injured, and so he missed a lot of the action in the bubble leading into the postseason. But 18 points on 8 of 11 in Game 1, and what was glorified garbage time, but maybe that's what he needed to get him into a rhythm, and he's going to have an opportunity to be in the rotation now.
And that's the thing where in the season, obviously, he was one of those guys who had the outside chance outside of, your top two, John Morant, Zion Williamson, of being a Rookie of the Year. Yeah. He was huge in that Heat rotation. And I believe he had a COVID situation, which is what got him out during the bubble. But no, I think to your point, to see him go off like he did, like you said, although it's late, one thing obviously with this Miami Heat team that we're seeing is they are going to need someone that can get buckets up like that, especially – not even just for Game 2, but going on further in the series, if Dragic, that foot injury is lingering and a whole lot worse than what they're leading on right now, they're going to need that big punch, especially off the bench. And so that'll be something interesting to see. Yeah,
another thing I'm curious about with Miami is if they decide to start Myers Leonard. And I heard Antonio Daniels talking about this on Sirius XM NBA radio earlier today. Because ideally, the best matchup for Bam Adebayo when he comes back healthy would be Anthony Davis and not Dwight Howard. And you would want more of a traditional big on Dwight Howard, which is kind of Myers Leonard. Bam, I mean, he's been playing center, but he kind of, at 6'9", he's more of a point power forward, if you will. And, he is certainly has the lateral quickness and the athleticism to keep up with an Anthony Davis. He's given up a lot of size to Dwight Howard. I mean, that guy, he is still in really good shape. He is, cut like a god, basically. I mean, he is sculpted so well. Not to, completely just lionize a guy, but, Myers Leonard certainly has the girth and the strength and just the body to play a Dwight Howard a little bit better, so you can have Bam on a better matchup. So, Anthony Davis isn't going for 34 on you every day.
No, I agree completely. I mean, I thought even when the series first started, before the series started, that was going to be the matchup. I thought it was going to be Bam up against Anthony Davis because, again, obviously, if you do that, there's really not that much other height or size on Miami, like you mentioned, outside of Myers Leonard, or even if they want to go Kelly Olynyk, but hasn't really been playing that much in this postseason. So the question then would be, all right, well, if you have your biggest person guarding AD, who's guarding Dwight? Now, Dwight's not going to get you 30 like AD can, but still something that would be, like, say, safety valve, end of shot clock. Let's just throw it up to Dwight and let him put the ball up. So, and that is the tough situation that the Heat find themselves in right now.
Yeah, no, it is. And I try not to overreact from one game. And, they got down 30 in Game 1, and people are saying, people went from saying Lakers in 6 or 7 to Lakers in 3.5, basically, after one game. Let's slow our roll like a young buck track. and hold on a little bit. It's just one game. I remember Lakers Celtics, one of those series, where like one of the Lakers, I forget who, one of those teams lost by 40 points and then came back, and that was a much closer series in that one game. So I'm not counting the Miami Heat out yet. Obviously, Dragic and Bam being hurt doesn't help things, but if they can come back for a game 3, then the series isn't over yet. I'm not going to write out a team that has Jimmy Butler leading it and has a coach as good as Eric Spoelstra. You throw that one game away, you come back and try to compete for games 2 and beyond. I think it's a 6-game series. Like, I'm still going to give Miami 2 wins in this series.
Okay. Yeah. So going into it, I gave them 1, and I'm just going to stick with that. Again, not even to be disrespectful. I know the injuries are there, but I think the thing for me is just at a certain standpoint, I get you play hard as Miami does. There's so many different players on the floor that can hurt you, but it's just after a while, you being outmanned and outmatched, it catches up to you. Yeah. And it has now where, obviously Miami, they've been running a zone defense a good bit this series, this playoffs. And even then, it's just when you look at what the Lakers have and what they can do, especially when you have a guy like LeBron on the ball or Rondo. Obviously, the biggest thing that hurts a zone and kills a zone is penetration. And they definitely have the guys that can do that. So that neutralizes one of their biggest weapons. And I know it's weird to hear that, saying that a defense is one of the team's biggest weapons, but it definitely has been for the Heat. So I see the Lakers getting it done in 5. One thing I would like to see LA do differently, though, is change that starting lineup. I was not a big fan of their starting lineup in game 1. I felt like they tried to overdo the whole big team thing where, there was Danny Green and KCP in the backcourt. So I would go Rondo, let Rondo start, and have another person on the floor that can handle the ball, do some penetration, and take at least a little bit off LeBron's shoulders. Besides that, I mean, it's just going to be tough for Miami.
Yeah, and here's the thing that'll make it even tougher. Like, Rajon Rondo is hitting threes this postseason. Yes.
Right.
And if he's hitting threes, like, Miami does not have a chance. That's the thing. I was listening to Rick Campbell and Antonio Daniels on Sirius XM NBA radio, as I alluded to earlier, and a caller called up and mentioned that like Miami's one advantage was the 3-point shooting. They take a lot more threes than the Lakers, but percentage-wise, they're pretty even in the bubble. And after the last game, after game 1 of the NBA Finals, like, I think even the Lakers are shooting just a touch better in the bubble from 3 as far as percentage, 3-point percentage in the bubble, if you just look at it from a percentage standpoint. So if the Lakers are shooting a better percentage from 3 than Miami, I'm only saying Lakers in 6 because that's what I said, and I don't want to overreact to game 1. But if the Lakers are going to shoot 40% from 3, Miami has 0 chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say anything, 35% and up for the Lakers. And that's what we've seen in the bubble, though. And I've talked to a lot of other people who are much better shooters than I am. And they've all said that because of that backdrop and that background, it's not as deep as it is if you're in Staples Center or American Airlines Arena. It is definitely a shooter's gym. And so I think that if you're a team that usually isn't a good 3-point shooting team, such as the Lakers, that only helps you out that much more, that you can now add what Dr. Joaquin Walsh would always say, that's a new tool in the toolkit you can put in, and then that 3-point shooting ability.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely kind of a different backdrop for sure in the bubble to shoot behind or shoot with that in kind of your periphery. So yeah, that's a good point. And it's not like the Lakers don't have capable 3-point shooters. I mean, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope really turned that game around with a couple of threes there in the first quarter. They were down 13. Like, Miami might have been down 17 at halftime, but the Heat got out to a 23-10 lead. It was a 30-point turnaround in the first half, but there was a chunk of that first quarter. You're thinking, man, Miami came out. They're prepared. They're ready to rumble. And
Oh yeah,
then the rest of the game happened, but
I mean, it looked like for a second to me, at least to start off, the Lakers took it for granted a little bit. Things, I mean, especially offensively, things just looked a little slow and methodical, not really any emphasis to it. And then all of a sudden, once they got smacked in the mouth, though, that's when the Lakers showed up. And then after that, of course, injuries happened too for Miami, but that about did it. So you heard it here. Kevin says Lakers in 6. I say Lakers in 5, but we both agree the Lakers are going to win the series, and LeBron will get that 4th ring. Who do you think gets MVP, though?
that is the question. I mean, it's either LeBron or it's Anthony Davis. After one game, obviously Anthony Davis has the leg up. I'm curious. This is what I'm going to say. If it is at all close, the media is going to give it to LeBron James.
Absolutely.
So as long, if LeBron almost had a triple-double last night. He subbed himself out with 9 assists. I was like, come on, man. He knows his stats. I know I care about his triple-doubles more than he cares about his triple-doubles. But if he continues to put up near triple-doubles every game, even if Anthony Davis is going for 30-8 one night, 32-9 the next, 31, 6, and 4 blocks, it's going to be tough for the media to not give it to LeBron James because, it's a legacy-driven league, and it's all about the storylines and the narratives. And there are a lot of people, and I am the biggest LeBron James fan on the planet, and there are a lot of people that are rooting for him to reach GOAT status. And it's not going to come with a 4th championship. Michael Jordan's still going to be the best in my book, regardless of what happens in this series. But there are people who want to help kind of, elevate LeBron. I'm one of them. And if it's going to be close, they're going to say, well, Anthony Davis has a lot more time in his career to get these NBA Finals MVPs. Let's give it to the king.
I mean, that's part of what makes it so fun, right? The comparison. And obviously we're already making it now when he's 3-6, Michael Jordan 6-0. So now you get to 4-6, but maybe potentially, and again, this is just going down the road, maybe a 5-6. Then it gets even closer and more interesting. But yeah, switching sides. So we were talking about what's going on in the bubble. Let's go to Bradenton.
Yep.
This matchup, Kevin, I'm assuming you are very excited for it. I know I am. Seattle Storm, they swept the Lynx to get to the WNBA Finals, and what a tough one it was on the other side. The Las Vegas Aces beating the Connecticut Sun by 3. And first and foremost, before we even talk about the finals matchup, just want to take a moment again, Alyssa Thomas, for everything she did, what she's been going through, obviously, both shoulders, torn labrum, and then hurt it again. And said, no, you know what? If I can go, I'm going to go. And then puts up a double in the final game. I mean, you talk about leaving everything out on the floor, the court, whatever you want to call it. She did that and then some.
I just don't know how you play with torn labrum in both shoulders. It seems impossible. You need your shoulders to shoot. And she figured out a different way how to shoot, which was incredible. That the ball would ever go into the hoop when you have a torn labrum in your shooting shoulder, much less both shoulders. It's incredible the numbers she was able to put up and almost willing that team to the WNBA Finals. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was rooting for Connecticut because I love watching DeWanna Bonner. She's one of my 10 favorite players in the WNBA to watch, and Alyssa Thomas is right up there. I'm a huge Breonna Jones fan as well. And then, of course, the Pac-12 connections with Breon January and what she added to that team once she got into the lineup about a third of the way into the season or so. I thought they were really impressive. Kurt Miller is a hell of a coach.
Absolutely.
He gets noticed for his Hawaiian shirts and kind of the jazzy polos he wears. But I'm telling you something, that guy knows how to coach some X's and O's. Really impressive. This team, we forget they were 0-5 to start the season. And in a 22-game season, you're starting 0-5. You're thinking 1-2-3 Cancun pretty soon. And so really a credit to them. They got to 500, finished 10-12, and then get all the way to the semis and have a 2-1 lead on the team with the number 1 seed in the WNBA playoffs. Really impressive stuff. But obviously, Las Vegas got it done, and they deserve to be in the finals.
Yeah, Connecticut, 3 of 19 in that final game behind the three. Both teams really did not shoot well, but I think the thing is when you look at it, obviously your superstars, when the lights shine bright, they have to be there. And again, Alyssa Thomas was, DeWanna Bonner, as you mentioned, did not have a really good shooting night. But then when you look at it on the other hand, I mean, starting from the top, there's a reason why she was the MVP and showed it in that game. Talking about Asia Wilson, 23 points, 7 of 17 shooting, 11 rebounds. I mean, absolutely dominant.
Yeah, just incredible stuff. I mean, she's showing why she was the MVP. Shout out to Danielle Robinson from San Jose, California.
Hey.
Older brother Jonathan went to Bellarmine, my school. He's a year older. I want to say he played collegiately at Hampton. So, she went to Archbishop Mitty, the same school that produced the Gordon brothers, most notably Aaron Gordon. And she had a 10-rebound game. And I want to say it was in Game 5 when she had to. And she's a guard, by the way. She was a great scorer at Oklahoma collegiately, can really fill it up in the WNBA. So I really liked seeing Danielle Robinson have a big-time performance.
And in that 10-rebound game, 4 of those on the offensive side. And again, just one last note on Asia Wilson, I think that's most impressive to me. Look how many minutes she played. And I mean, for the most part, you had everyone was over 30 minutes played who was a starter in this game, but all 40 minutes. I mean, you talk about not leaving the floor, leaving everything out there. Again, I know we said it for Alyssa Thomas, but once again, Asia Wilson doing it as well. And of course, what I am so excited about, as I mentioned on the last podcast, Atlanta Dream legend, Angel McCoughtry, 20 points, 6 of 16, a good game for her. I'm so happy that she's going to be back in the WNBA finals and has a chance to get that ring that the Dream just could not finish off so many times.
She is so freaking good out there. It's fun watching Angel McCoughtry. And, the Dream, they just ran into, they ran into that Minnesota Lynx dynasty, which, with Maya Moore back in those days, like you weren't going to win a title. So, I'm not going to say hopefully she gets it because I'll save this for later, but I do want to see the Storm win. Nothing against the Aces. Well, maybe a little bit against kind of their philosophy, but I'll say that for a little bit later. But I wouldn't be mad if she got a ring for sure.
So then going to the other side, obviously, again, starting at the top, I don't know how you stop. I'll take that back. You don't stop her. And this was the case in this series. Breanna Stewart finishing them off in game 3, 31 points. Then, of course, there's the leadership of Sue Bird. And I was listening to a quote. It was from Gino Auriemma about Sue Bird because obviously, she's been playing for 15 plus years. And he was saying Sue Bird is one of those players that is willing to give up or do whatever she has to do to win a championship. And then he ended it saying that's the only reason why you get to play that long if you're that fortunate. And Sue Bird's just that. She added 16 points, 9 assists. I mean, it doesn't stop with those two. And again, I think this is one of the fun things about this series is that the two-headed monsters, right, on both sides. And as it usually say in sports, superstars are the ones that get the games done for you. So it's going to be interesting to look at after each game which duo has the better outcome or the better performance.
Yeah, that's the thing that's really interesting to me. You mentioned Sue Bird in the 16-9 game. You look at some of the WNBA stars that are pushing 40, like her and Diana Taurasi. Like Taurasi had an incredible season in her late 30s. Like this is just stuff you don't see that often. I mean, Candace Parker, now she's a lot younger than Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi, but she's a player that people thought has passed her prime. There was that one article in The Athletic last year, who's the most overrated player in the league, and they mentioned Candace Parker, and she comes back and wins Defensive Player of the Year this year, and averages a near double-double when people had, not that they had written Candace off, but they saw her as someone who is on the downswing of her career, I think. And, she came back and had a great season. You see all these, players who are considered past their prime putting up prime-esque numbers. And I think that was one of the really intriguing things to me about the Wubble this year.
Oh, without a doubt. And to the Candace Parker point, I think a lot of that for her is just also injuries too. I think, whenever someone, usually I would say that in an athlete's career period, and unfortunately, I think we see a lot of people talking about the same thing in a different sport with Serena Williams. Of once you see that players start to really rack up a lot of injuries over and over, that's usually when they say you're on that downslope of the career. And so, for Candace, and again, if anyone hasn't realized yet, I am a huge Candace Parker fan. Became a Tennessee women's basketball fan because of her, watching those teams with the late great Pat Summitt. And so with Candace, it was so awesome to see, again, like you mentioned, not just talking about defensive player of the year, which she did win. She was right there in the MVP discussion too. And obviously the Sparks were in the playoffs. It would have been awesome to see them get a little bit further. But again, when you look at some of these teams these two teams that are going to play in the finals, it's tough. These are, again, two really good teams. And I know one player in particular, Kevin, that you've really talked about too, when you look outside of just that the big duo for the Seattle Storm and I think she'll be the X factor, is Jewell Loyd.
Oh yeah. Jewell Loyd. She can score whenever she wants to. She has had some great games. That former number one pick has really done some nice things. Another player that I like in that backcourt, another X factor, Jordan Canada. Mm-hmm. When Sue Bird was out this year, she kept that ship afloat and then some. I'm a big Jordan Canada fan from her UCLA days. They got so much talent. We haven't talked about Natasha Howard yet, a former defensive player of the year in the WNBA, and someone who got off to a slow start this year, but really kind of found her footing as the season wore on. So I think we're in for a great finals, and we're in for kind of contrasting styles, if you will. This was kind of what I was alluding to earlier. As someone who watches the G League incessantly and sees teams put up 45 to 53s per game on the regular, I look at the Las Vegas Aces and they shoot under 12 3-pointers per game, and it blows my mind. And it's that Bill Laimbeer old school thinking. He played in the bad boy era in the late 80s where teams were shooting 4 threes a game. And, you got Carolyn Swords there, who kind of reminds me if she was a football player, she'd be part of Chris Marinelli's kind of tunnel workers union, just getting all the dirty work done. She's that kind of player, so indispensable to having success as a team, but someone who's not going to light up the stat sheet. Those are the players that Bill Laimbeer loves. They're not the players that are going to go out and jack up 10 threes a game. In Seattle, they shoot they almost double up the Aces attempts in the regular season. They shot 21 threes per game, and Dallas led the league just by comparison at a tick under 28 threes per game. So, for a 40-minute game, that's getting them up there pretty good. But I remember the opener, the Aces against the Sky, their regular season opener in the Wubble, the Aces didn't attempt a three until late in the third quarter. And it's just a different way to play basketball. And, there's that part of me that says you got to be able to make a lot of threes in today's game to win. And I feel like the Storm, they have that in their DNA more than the Aces do. And that's why I would lean towards Seattle. I just also thought when Seattle was playing their best basketball, they started 11-1 or something. They looked like world beaters. It looked like nobody could touch them. They came down to earth a little bit, but they're still in the WNBA finals. I thought it was going to be. I think I said this before. I had my money on Storm and Sparks, but obviously that did not happen.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I lean Seattle in this series. But don't get me wrong. Bill Laimbeer has coached that team up really well. And when you have the MVP in Asia Wilson and you have Angel McCoughtry as well, not to mention the San Josean Danielle Robinson, so on and so forth. It's going to be a tight series, but I'm still going to lean Seattle.
Yeah, and again, since I'm definitely bringing fandom into this again, being a pulling for Angel McCautry here. Just also of note, since Kevin was talking about the 3-point shooting difference, there's only one player on the Aces who's shooting over 35% in the playoffs from three right now, and that's Angel McCautry, 45%. But I'm again just as a fan of Angel McCautry, I'll lean with the Aces. I'll pick him in five. I think this one's going to go the distance. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'll go Storm and Cinco.
In five. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think it's like you said, it's always fun to me in any sport, but especially in basketball when you see those contrasting styles go against each other. So it's gonna be fun to watch.
It really is. And just quickly, because you mentioned how you became a fan of Tennessee women's basketball, just kind of wanted to give my story with respect to Tennessee and like kind of how I got influenced in my collegiate kind of not career or whatever. I didn't play college basketball, but I remember watching a Shamiqua Holdsclaw documentary and she got a 3.7 GPA at Tennessee. I distinctly remember this because when I got to college, I'm like, I want to get a 3.7 GPA, and it's because of Shamiqua Holdsclaw.
That's
and
really
so
cool.
like, I mean, now I took like dummy classes at Stanford, so I was able to get the 3.7. I had like a lot of classes with visiting professors who were just like, oh, they're Stanford students, we're just going to give them A's. Like, it was, it's why I majored. It's not why I majored in Spanish. I wanted to like learn the language, but like it just turned out we had a lot of professors who it wasn't that hard for us to get A's in these classes. And that's why I dropped out of econ. I was going to be an econ minor, but like I was motivated to get a 3.7 at Stanford because of Shamiqua Holdsclaw.
That's really cool. I mean, hey, first and foremost, honesty is the best policy. And to finish up my Candace Parker story, the first ever women's college basketball game I went to, I still remember it. The SEC women's tournament was being held in Duluth, Georgia, so a little bit outside, not Duluth, Suwanee, sorry. So a little bit outside Atlanta. And the matchup I saw? It was Tennessee versus LSU. So I saw Candace Parker versus Sylvia Fowles.
Ooh,
that's
a matchup.
Yeah, I remember. I think LSU actually ended up winning that one too.
Do you remember what year that was?
What year was that? I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
No, I cannot. But again, so interesting series to watch. It's going to be a fun one starting again tomorrow. It'll be right before the NBA Finals game. So anyone out there, you have no excuse to not watch it. You can't say I was watching this game more than the other. No excuse. And so moving forward, I know usually this is the part of the show where we make football picks. I am staying away from football. Well, I'm going to be watching, but in terms of picking and have to say anything good about the Falcons this week, I'm going to stay away from it.
Yeah, Waddy threw his Falcons gear outside and said they can't. He texted me. I thought this was great. He texted me and said they can't come back in until they behave.
Yeah. So and just to update, I moved everything to the storage closet because sometimes we have like stray cats or whatever. They'll walk around. I'm not like one of those crazy people that'll burn stuff. I still paid money for it, so I'm not going to burn it. But so I put it in the storage closet, and basically, eventually somewhere down the road, and here I am talking about the Falcons. You got to hold people accountable. So it's just they're going to stay in there until they want to get right, whether that's finish out a game and win, make coaching changes, whatever. It's just staying out there, out of sight, out of mind.
You talk about holding people accountable. I kind of want to hold football players accountable here. And this is something I have been pondering since we're not going to talk football predictions. I've been pondering this ever since I have been a manager of a college basketball team.
Okay.
When there's a timeout in football, you have the training staff that comes out there. And I am just curious why the water needs to be squeezed and squirted into their mouth by someone, why the football player cannot grab the water bottle, squeeze it, and then hand it back. I think I know the answer is that there's not, people don't come out there with 11 water bottles and you got to share water bottles. But then you have like 3 or 4 like training staff coming into the huddle. I mean, I get it that football players are gods on a lot of campuses, but you could grab your own water bottle, right?
So it's funny. So before I answer that, Kevin did say before this show he had a question and he'd been wanting to ask it for a long time. And I'm thinking, okay, this might be an X's and O's thing or whatnot. You were right though. I had no idea this was coming, and it's funny because at Stanford though we did use our own water bottles.
Okay, yeah. So I wasn't sure about that. So you did grab your own water bottle in the
Right.
timeout.
Oh,
It wasn't like
timeouts or even on the bench. They'd just walk around to where, like, obviously, if you're on the sidelines, you're sitting with your position coach and your position group going over what happened. Talking about what you saw, things like that. So they would just walk around, whether it's with the actual individual cups or the bottles, and we just take the bottle, drink whatever, and then we put it back.
Okay, normal human being stuff.
But no, it's fun because didn't ESPN do a feature on like the water, like trainers and bringing out water to people like a few years ago, I want to say?
They might have, but it just came from years of watching football. I can't remember if it's NFL or college football where I've seen it, where it's normal now. I feel like where just guys just open up their mouths and someone's squirting water in there. And I'm like, come on. Like, hey, I was the water boy. And I'm like, if like Anthony Good just opened up his mouth and said, come on, pour it in. I would have done it. I would have done it without asking. Or Brooke Lopez said, come on, Kevo. Give me the signal for squeeze the water bottle into his mouth. Like, it'd be a little demeaning, I think. I don't know.
Especially if you're at Virginia, right?
Yeah.
That's a story we're going to have to make sure you share on a podcast soon.
Oh, man. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure which story you're. I'm trying to remember which because I've told you a few stories. And I'm trying to remember which one were.
I think it was the one where I think there was a comeback in Virginia, and you're getting hype and turning up on the bench, and coach sees you and calls you out on it.
Oh, you know what? That actually. Oh, that's your boy Remy. That's your boy Remy.
That's right. It was Remy.
So yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Remy, I'm blowing up your spot here. I heard this secondhand. But yeah. So it's going crazy. Big. This is a big win at Virginia. Lawrence Hill hits a game-winning shot with 0.7 of a second. I don't know at what point, but Remy was as he should was going crazy. Trent Johnson takes one look at him and, excuse my French, I'm going to quote the coach directly here. He's like, sit the fuck down, Remy. And Trent Johnson has this deep, deep voice. I love Trent Johnson to death. He's awesome. I would do anything for that guy. But he's intimidating. And especially when you're, 19 to 20-year-old, like, I tried to keep my contact with him, yes, sir, no, sir. Love the man, but he could be scary. And so like when he looks at you and tells you to sit the F down, it's it's not a place you want to be. I would not want to be Remy in that situation.
It's funny because now that you said it was Remy, I remember him telling me the story, and he was saying just for the rest of the game that the student section, because the student section I think was right behind the bench. And so the student section is just on him the rest of the game, calling towel boy and things like that. Where obviously, if you're playing a game, let's say you airball a shot, you're gonna get that airball chant for the rest of the game or something like that. Can you imagine not even playing? You're the one of the managers, and you're the one getting trash talk for the rest of the game by a student section.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've been like I remember at Washington, like guys would pull up their warm-ups and I didn't want them to be on the floor, so I just told them to like pile it onto me. I would just like hold all of them, and at Washington they'd be like, hey laundry boy. At Arizona State they'd look at me and they'd be like, hey, real men wear double-digit shoe sizes. I wear an 11 but they're trying to get on my foot size. Like it's like it was you try not to laugh in those situations because you don't take offense to it. It's just funny heckling. You don't want to egg them on and stuff. So, yeah. But so that's like why I thought about this squeezing the water bottle thing. Like, I mean, how common is that? I just see it on TV a lot.
I think in the NFL it's definitely more common than it is in college.
Okay.
Now, in current times, because of COVID, now it might be interesting to see how often it does or doesn't happen, even on the collegiate level. And before, I think I used to mostly see it in the NFL than I did in college.
Okay. All right. So you've never had a trainer squeeze a water bottle into your mouth? I see it happen at Woodward.
I probably have, but more like I'd say 96, 97% of the time.
Okay.
I'm controlling my own water
All right.
bottle.
All right. Well, then in the NFL, I want to see that eradicated. I want to see players squeezing their own water bottles. It's not that like I see like the managerial perspective, like it's more efficient to just instead of like, handing the water bottle, that takes an extra second. And, when you have, coaches like Nick Saban in college or, in the NFL, like every second is precious, yada, yada, yada. But it's not that precious.
Oh man! So now that we're all hydrated,
yeah,
whether somebody else
a water
did
bottle
it,
right here,
whether someone else did it to you or you did it for yourself, we're just gonna finish off just talking again about we talked about it a little at the beginning, MLB playoffs, calling it the fall frenzy. 2 added teams per league. You have 8 teams now instead of the usual 6. And as you could expect, looks like there are a couple of upsets that might happen. I know upset did happen with the Astros beating the Twins. You have a couple other ones. The Marlins, I think, are a game up on the Cubs right now. They're getting postponed today. But, Kevin, we'll fast forward it a little bit. Give me who you have coming out of the AL and who do you have coming out of the National League?
All right, so out of the AL, the Yankees had their dip this season where they got back down to 500, but they've been on a tear. And I mean, with that lineup, just the home run power, they really are the Bronx Bombers.
Oh yeah.
And you got Garrett Cole at the top of that rotation. I don't see anybody beating the Yankees in the American League. I think they're going to the World Series. And obviously the easy pick is the Dodgers. And right now, as we are taping this, they're up 3-0 on Milwaukee. And I think that says the bottom of the 7th. My eyes aren't the best, but and they are the 1 seed. I think it's going to be a Dodgers Marlins NLCS.
Okay.
And the only reason I say is because the Miami Marlins, for as terrible as they have been as a franchise, they have not lost a postseason series. They have been to the playoffs twice in 25 years or whatever, and they have won the World Series twice. It was the same reason why I picked the Tampa Bay Rays to go to win the World Series back in 2008 when it was their first year. I'm like, oh, they're a Florida team. They're not going to lose in the playoffs. So I have the Yankees in the American League. And I mean, I want to say the Marlins just for that theme, but I'm going to say the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in the AL, if Matt Chapman were still healthy, talking about the third baseman for the A's, and it was funny, and this was more so me being funny / being a homer. I texted Jessica Kleinschmidt, obviously who works with MC Sports Bay Area. Shout out Jessica. And I said, before the playoffs started, I said, here we go, A's versus Braves, World Series. I won't hear otherwise. And when I look at it, it was just like, man, if Matt Chapman were playing with that lineup that they have, and maybe not as powerful as the Yankees are, or as threatening of a power as the Yankees are, but they can hit theirs too. They have arguably the best bullpen in the major leagues, which is huge in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna go with the Rays.
Okay.
That starting rotation is filthy, and their lineup. I mean, they have a lot of really good players in that lineup. I wouldn't say they have superstars. It's not like the Evan Longoria days or anything like that. But it's just a balanced, deep, good lineup. So I like them. And then in the NL, I tell you what, I would feel so much better about this if we had Mike Soroka. With what I saw from Ian Anderson, what I saw from Max Fried, again, a really good deep bullpen. My best guess, since the NLDS, it'll be a best of 5. You'll even see Josh Tomlin potentially make a spot start, and he can go a lot of innings. But I mean, first and foremost, if we do play the Marlins in the next round, I just don't see the Marlins beating us. And I know like that's your stat. That whenever the Marlins are in the playoffs, they just win. That's just what they do. But you talk about a team having another team's number. The last few years, the Braves have the Marlins number, and no Jose Urena is the best starting pitcher besides, I believe his name's Sexto Sanchez, real young guy for the Marlins he's a monster. But the Braves get past that. But you know what's going to be fun? I want to see the Padres go up against the Dodgers.
I
want to see that so badly.
That would be great. I mean, Tatis has been so fun to watch this year. I mean, you want to talk about a powerful lineup. Him, Manny Machado. Whew. Yeah, that's fun.
But
while you mentioned the Braves, I just want to give a shout out to Matzik for what he did in the late innings. I mean, he came in not a position you want to come in out of the bullpen. Multiple runners on, nobody out. Then he got himself into he came on to get one out. I believe in the 11th, maybe it was the 12th. The extra innings kind of blend at this point when they got to 13, but needed to get came in 2 outs. I think it was bases loaded, 3 pitches, strikeout. Then he puts runners on. He's in a huge, I think it was like first and third with nobody out. And then he gets out of that jam. And that really kind of set the table for the Braves. I really felt like if the Braves lost that game, I thought they were going to lose the next day. I really thought like whoever won that game 1 was going to win game 2, just, from the Uncle Mo generated off, a 1-0 win, at that stage. So, and that is what happened. But Matzik was incredible. And this is a guy that was out of baseball a few years ago.
He had the yips. He couldn't hit the zone anymore. But
Mark Wohlers.
Right. And I mean, who else? Rick Ankiel was like that too. Remember, he was a pitcher, then all of a sudden couldn't do it, so he switched to being an outfielder. But the biggest thing for me with the Braves and winning was all of a sudden you were able to put a rookie pitcher making his 7th start, I think, in the big leagues. He doesn't have any pressure on him. If you lose this game, you don't have a good start, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, Waddy. And the thing about, you want to talk about pressure, and all right, no fans this year, so it's a little different. But I want to say Ian Anderson's first 2 wins came at Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park.
I think so. At least his first 2 starts did for sure.
So, so you're pitching in 2 of the most, obviously it's the new Yankee Stadium, so it's not the one that was around way back in the day, but still it's Yankee Stadium. And Fenway Park has, been there since the dawn of time. And if you win in those 2 historic ballparks, to start off your career, yes, there aren't fans there, but that's something. Like, it's not something that a lot of rookie pitchers can say.
No, absolutely. And also, I think that's another reason why I'll go ahead and pick the Braves, more so because I already texted Jessica, so I can't turn back now, is that let's say they do have to play this loaded Dodgers team. You don't have to go to Dodger Stadium with 55,000 fans. You're going to be in, I believe they'll be somewhere in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So that one of the big parts of that, you talked about the glam and the history and the aura of the Yankee Stadiums, Fenway Parks. Dodger Stadium's right there too. So now all of a sudden that's a big part of it that's taken out, and so it evens the playing field a little bit. Plus, you would hope if it gets that standpoint, that playoff Kershaw jinx or reputation would strike up a little bit. Plus, we still haven't really seen this offense that the Braves have really get going yet. So, that's got to happen eventually too.
Yeah, it got going a little more today. They did put up 5 runs on the board, but it wasn't the 26 or 29 runs they got in the game earlier this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of too, just for Marcell Ozuna's standpoint here, I'm just gonna take a little selfie.
Yes, stopping after first base.
He didn't even make it to first base until
yeah. that was incredible.
Yeah, but so you heard it here. That is all we have. Thanks everyone again for tuning in. Kevin, 3 down, another good episode. And before we do finish up, I do want to make one more note. Congrats to the Tampa Bay Lightning for winning the Stanley Cup. I believe that's the second in franchise history. It's just always really cool to see a Southern hockey team do well. So shout out to Tampa Bay. Obviously, Steven Stamkos has been one of the best players in the league for quite a while now.
Yeah, Vasilevsky in net. RIP Thrashers, if we're talking about Southeastern professional hockey.
Thanks,
went to the playoffs 2 or 3 times, didn't get a win in any playoff. I think they didn't. I mean, they got swept every time they got to the playoffs.
I think they made it once because they won the Southeast Division and then got swept by the Rangers in that first round.
Okay, yeah. So, and Atlanta's had 2 professional hockey teams. One's in Calgary and one's in Winnipeg now. So,
imagine and like, I mean, obviously this is hockey; it's a little different. But could you imagine going from being in Atlanta to being in Winnipeg?
that's a culture shock.
A little bit of a culture shock. I don't think they have lemon pepper hot in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a Magic City in Manitoba.
Which means there's no Lou Williams either.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. We will see y'all next week.